I am less than 24 hours away from finding out what the cheapest guitar on Amazon plays like and sounds like. I honestly have no idea what to expect quality-wise from this guitar. The total cost with free shipping included and tax was $80.80. The guitar was $74.99. So the guitar is made by a brand that I've never heard of. It's called a Demusia. It looks like a Strat copy. It has 3 single coil pickups. It has a tremolo bridge, which has me very concerned. It comes with a gig bag, tremolo bar, looks like some miscellaneous tools, and a strap and a cable. I'm sure they will all be of the highest quality. Overall, the guitar has 3.9 stars out of 5 with 20 ratings, which is pretty impressive for the price range. And after reading the reviews, it left me no closer to figuring out whether this was a good idea to purchase this guitar or not. The reviews range from 5 stars, including Walter N's review where he says, I am a cancer survivor, had to sell all my high-end guitars because of surgery costs, have to start with budget guitars again. I just received my Demusia today. After tuning, this guitar was playable right out of the box. I did a setup oiled fretboard check for high frets. There was none. Tuners were very good. All screws were tight, no slop. Intonation was dead on, except E and A, slightly out. 2 seconds to adjust. Fret job from the factory was awesome. I didn't have to file any ends. They were like butter. That sounds pretty incredible. Like, I've gotten expensive Gibsons and Fenders that needed a setup that were supposedly set up from the factory. And then there was this kind of mystery 3-star right in the middle review from Jonathan Paul Harvey. 3 stars, why is there sticky residue on the case? That was the title. And then it says, well, that's just great. A sticky case, day before Christmas. Cool job, guys. And then there's a picture of a soft case with some miscellaneous debris on it, which I assume is the sticky residue he was complaining about. So a little bit more about this guitar. The description is somewhat straightforward. The color is metallic black. The top, body, and back material is Phoenix. It supposedly has a maple neck, a rosewood fretboard, which seems pretty cool for this price range. 3 single coil pickups. And then we get to the about this item section, which seems like there were some issues with translation. The first bullet point, excellent product making guitar production needs more than a dozen processes. We are strictly checked to ensure the quality of the guitars. Please ensure using. Despite like kind of scrambling my brain here, I assume they're very proud that they use more than a dozen processes to make the guitar, and there's a lot of ensuring that's happening. Next bullet point, best suitable for beginner, reasonable price, classical shape, C-back shape is good for holding, excellent low action is good for playing. So can't wait to get my hands on this thing and try out the low action. I do like a guitar with low action. All right, so that's it for now. We're gonna check back in once the guitar arrives tomorrow and see how this thing plays and sounds. Hey guys, it's the next day and the guitar has arrived and my kids have the day off school, Mila and Connor, so they're gonna help us do the unboxing. So let's go check it out. All right, so it's 2 days later. My kids are back to school, so I can finally have some time to take a look at this thing without distraction. So first impressions are, overall, it's really light. We'll get it on the scale and see exactly how light it is, but it's very, very, very light. Kind of what you expect from a guitar at this price point. The finish actually doesn't look too bad. I mean, it doesn't look professional, but it doesn't look bad. The neck is a C-shaped neck like they described. It is pretty thick. It's a thick neck. It's like a, I guess the nice way to say it is like it's a 50s style neck. That doesn't really bother me. I know that a lot of people, that can be kind of a deal breaker, but that doesn't really bother me. Pickups are single coil. They look pretty cheap. I'm sure they are. The tuners are actually pretty good. They don't feel like there's a lot of slack or anything in them. They feel actually pretty decent. My main concern is the action is pretty high, like really high, like almost unplayably high. Which is interesting because the description said that the action was low. The nut appears to be a little high, cut a little high. I'll have to measure that too. We'll measure that after this and see exactly what
if we need to take a little bit off. The good thing is it looks like it's a cheap plastic nut, which I guess is good and bad. It's good because my cheapo nut files will actually take these down pretty easily without having to do a ton of work. The fret ends actually seem to be dressed pretty well. Like I'm not the type of person who really has issues with fret ends, although a lot of people, I guess, do. I guess like Walter said, that the fret ends are actually fine. I wouldn't feel like I need to do anything to that. One concern is the tremolo bridge is really low. Like it's not set up properly. I don't play with a tremolo very often, so I'm not super concerned with that. Like if I was going to use this with a tremolo, I probably would lift this bridge up a little bit because it's resting against the body. And they're supposed to kind of, at least with Fenders and properly made tremolos, although this doesn't look like it's properly made. To be honest, they're supposed to kind of have like a little bit of give, and there's like an angle on the front of the bridge so that it kind of can float a little bit. And this is just jammed directly against the body, which actually I think is a good thing, because I don't think you're going to be able to set up this tremolo in any way, shape, or form that is going to keep it in tune and allow you to use the tremolo. So really, like the way we have it set up right now is it's just kind of a standard bridge that's locked to the body. So that's totally fine with me, and I'm going to keep it that way. And then the fretboard, I believe they said was rosewood. This is not any type of wood that I know of. It's probably like Rich Light. I think that's what that synthetic wood is called, which is actually probably going to be good, because we're going to check and see when we set this thing up if the neck is straight, and the Rich Light is usually a lot straighter. All right, so in summary, out of the box, I wouldn't consider this a good playable guitar that's going to be fun for anyone. And mostly because the action is high. The fretboard's dry, but that's no big deal. We can put some lemon oil on that. We'll do that. But the high action and it looks like the neck, there's quite a bit of neck bow on this thing, although I'll have to take a look, is going to make this not very fun to play. All right, so let's take this thing over to my table. Let's see what we need to do, check some of the dimensions, see what we need to do to get this thing set up to be a good playable guitar.
All right, so I've got the guitar out on the table, and the first thing I wanted to do is I wanted to check the weight of the guitar, and it is about 5 pounds, 9 ounces. So really light. Just for reference, my Fender American Standard Strat is about 8 pounds, 5 ounces. Now that's going to be a little different depending on the model, but it's a very light guitar, but to be honest, I don't really have too much of a problem with that. All right, so the first thing I want to check is the nut height on this. A quick way to kind of see where you're at is to press your finger down to the 3rd fret, and then you can just tap your first finger over the 1st fret, and there should just be barely any room, like almost nothing. And this one's got a little bit of a gap on the low E, and same on the high E. So this nut height is going to probably be pretty high. So then I'll usually take my feeler gauges, and what I want about 0.6 millimeters over the 1st fret on the low E to about 0.3, 0.4 on the high E. So that's the gap between the string and the 1st fret. This one I can tell is already going to be too high, so I'm just going to use my depth gauge here, and I'm just going to put it to get a kind of an idea. And yeah, we're at about a little over a millimeter, so 1.1, 1.2 millimeters, so it's almost twice as much as it should be. And then at the high E, it's about 1 millimeter. So the nut height is about twice as high as it should be. And that's gonna really affect everything about the playability on this guitar and the intonation. So we're gonna need to file the nut for sure. Next thing I wanna look at is the action height. So to check that, we are just gonna check the gap between the 12th fret and the low E string at the 12th fret. And I really want that to be about between like 1.5 and 2 millimeters, closer to 1.75. And the action's crazy high. We've got it over 3 millimeters at the low E, again, like twice what you would want it to be. And then at the high E, we want it to be about 1.2, 1.3, something like that. And I really just look for a little over the 1 millimeter mark. And we're at about 3 millimeters there. So yeah, the action's like, this guitar is like pretty much unplayable as is, which is a little disappointing because they promised low action, like I think a couple times in the description. But before we go about setting up the action and doing all these adjustments, we're gonna wanna make sure that the neck is straight, because if the neck is not straight, it's just gonna be kind of unsalvageable. So before we go forward, we're gonna check the neck, make sure the neck is straight, and then check for make sure the frets are level. All right, so we removed the strings, which happened to be a way bigger ordeal than it should have been. What happened was the strings were pulled tight, obviously, when you tune a guitar and pull the tension through the tremolo bridge from the back, pulls the string in, and the balls at the end of the string were wedged into the holes drilled through the tremolo bridge. And I don't know if the holes were drilled too small or what, but they were just jammed in there. So I had to cut the strings, and then I had to use a mallet, this mallet here, and this little thin screwdriver to pound the balls out back the other end. So I feel bad for like any beginner who might have gotten this guitar and God forbid they wanted to change their strings at some point, and they might have messed up the guitar trying to get those out. But nonetheless, the strings are off. What we want to do is we want to check the neck straightness. Now, I am not a professional luthier or guitar maker or guitar fixer. I'm a home one who does it with his own guitars. Mostly the extent of my guitars what I will do with my expensive guitars like Fenders and Gibsons is I will set them up. I don't tend to mess with the frets, like fret jobs or anything like that with my expensive guitars, but like cheap guitars that I buy from China or whatever, if I do, I'm more comfortable with messing with them. So that being said, I don't have the top of the line tools because I just don't need them. This one is the Louise Guitar Neck Straightness Check Tool, which I got off Amazon for $15.79. I'll put a link there, and I actually verified it on my quartz countertop that I have, that it's straight on both ends. So I'm pretty confident that this thing's gonna be as straight as we need it to be to set up a cheap Amazon guitar. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna check the straightness of the neck. So we're just gonna take this tool, and it has little notches for the frets, and they get smaller as you get to a smaller gap up the fretboard. And we're just gonna lay it down, and then we're just gonna check the gap. And now typically what you would see with a guitar that was probably adjusted, had the truss rod adjusted properly, is you'd see like a convex bow to the neck, because what you have is the strings are pulling it one direction and the truss rod is pulling it the other, so it would be more bowed so that it would kind of even out. With this, I'm actually seeing a concave. So when you actually put the strings on and their strings are pulling and you have a concave bow to the neck, what you're seeing is even more bow, which would explain the high action and the bad setup that we had before. So what I want to do is I want to take the Allen wrench that they provided, and there's actually easy access to the truss rod right here, which is nice. And we are going to tighten the truss rod. And I like to do it like about a quarter of a turn at a time. And so we're going to do, if you want to think of it like lefty loosey, righty tighty, you can think of it that way, or clockwise to tighten it. And we're gonna just do like about a quarter of a turn here. And then we're gonna check the straightness of the neck again. So it seems like we took a little bit of that concavity out. And what we're looking for here is we want to get it completely flat while we check the fret heights and make sure that there's no uneven frets. And make sure we get this completely flat before we put the strings back on, and then we can adjust the neck relief from there once we're ready to do the setup. So I'm gonna do another quarter turn. And you really, less is more when you're turning the truss rod. Now, one of my concerns with a cheap guitar like this is that the truss rod actually doesn't do anything. I think we're pretty much there. I'm just gonna do a little more. And then I'm just gonna run this all the way across the width of the fretboard, make sure it's straight all the way across. Luckily we've got this rich light fretboard, so it's nice and straight. And now that we've adjusted the truss rod to make sure that the neck is straight, we've got the neck straight. One thing that you want to do to make sure is you want to have your neck support. Now I've got my cheap styrofoam one that came in the box. Sometimes I even use a beach towel. You want to keep your support towards the end of your neck. You don't want to have it like here where you can kind of bend the neck. You want to keep it at the end, and you don't want to put any pressure when you're doing it because that could change the profile of the neck. So now we're done with that, we want to check for any high frets. You've probably seen these if you watched any YouTube videos on checking the frets. These are called fret rockers. And there's really nice ones that you can spend a lot of money on if you're going to be doing a lot of fret work on your guitars. You might want to invest in that. This is a cheap one I got off Amazon for $7.99. Again, I'll put the link in the description. It's called a Cash Beat Guitar String Action Gauge Ruler. And again, I checked this against my quartz table, all of the sides, to make sure that they're straight, and they're pretty straight enough for a cheap Amazon guitar setup. So these tools are pretty cool. So what you have is you have a bunch of different length edges. And what you want to do is you're going to start with the biggest edge, and you want to lay this across 3 frets. And this is going to kind of help you decide if the frets are high or low. So you're just going to kind of rock it back and forth like this. And if the fret is in the middle, you'll get a little bit of rocking. Like these are not rocking. Not really rocking at all. Not really rocking at all. They're pretty straight. You want to keep it parallel to the fretboard too, and you just kind of want to go like this and see if any of your frets are rocking. Now, as you move up the fretboard and the frets get closer together, you use your shorter side. So you go from your longest side to your shorter side, just to make sure that you're only checking 3 frets. Miraculously, this thing is, I'm getting no rocking, which is quite shocking. Like sometimes I even get rocking on expensive guitars. So I am finding at the 7th fret some rocking here. You can kind of hear that. I don't know if you can hear that, but it sounds like a knocking when it's rocking. No pun intended. So the first thing I'm going to try and take my mallet. And this mallet came with the Sue Joy 17-piece guitar luthier tool set. That was only $21.99 on Amazon. Again, I'll put the link in the description. Again, if you're going to be working on expensive guitars or guitars that you don't want to f up, I do not recommend this set. If you're working on very cheap guitars that you just want to kind of get more playable and you're not worried about f***ing them up, then this is the set for you. So it comes with this little helpful mallet. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of hold the neck here so that it doesn't move around too much. And I'm just going to try and tap. There's 2 ends. There's like a softer end and a harder end. And I'm just going to try and tap these in a little bit. Sometimes it helps to support right under where you're tapping. And then I'm just going to see if that helped. Not really. They look like they're set in there pretty well. So we're going to need to file that fret. I'm going to come back to that. I'm going to check the rest of the frets, and then I'm going to come back to that, and I'll show you how to do that. All right, so I checked all the frets, and we've got 2 high frets. We've got the 7th and 9th fret are high, and mostly just on the lower end of the strings, which is, to be honest, is miraculous considering the cost of this guitar. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to file those frets down. And what I like to do is, as I'm checking all the frets, I just mark the ones that with a Sharpie that are, I mark the ones with the Sharpie that are high. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mark the rest of the ones that are close to them as well. Now you can mask these. Some people like to mask these. I don't really care that much. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this straight tool, which this is a very cheap version. Again, get a good one if you're going to be working on good guitars or do this a lot. And I'm just going to go back and forth across these frets. And what I'm looking for is I'm looking for that Sharpie to come off across all of the frets that I've marked. And that will indicate that the frets are now level. And I don't want to go too much farther down below that. So I've got some heavier grit on this end and then some finer grit on the sides. So I like to start off with the heavier grit, just to work these down. And you want to kind of work back and side to side and back and forth, trying to maintain that neck radius. And I've just about taken off the Sharpie on all of these frets.
which indicates that they're level, so we didn't have too much rocking. I've got one kind of stubborn one, a couple stubborn spots, which is what you'll usually kind of find. And I'm going to move to switch to the finer grit. All right, we're there. That really didn't take too much effort. Part of it is because they weren't too high, and the other part of it is probably these are cheap frets of using like soft metal that's easy to file down. So once you think you got your frets even, you can take your fret rocker again and check for rocking. There's no rocking there, no rocking there. So we are good now. So you might have noticed when you were filing the frets that the frets are going to flatten out. You want kind of a rounded edge on your frets. You don't want a lot of fret material touching the string because that can affect your intonation. Not that I'm super concerned about it with this type of guitar, but just to show you the kind of concept. So we're gonna put this fret guard that came with our cheap guitar luthier kit, and we're gonna take this fret crowning tool, which also came with our El Cheapo kit, and we're just gonna put, there's like a groove in here, and that is going to give you the kind of that rounded top to your frets. And this one's like probably the worst one I've ever seen, but that's okay. And we're gonna put a little bit of fine grit sandpaper here, and we're just gonna kind of go back and forth. And we can use this fret guard if we want, if we're concerned about the fretboard getting scuffed up. Probably a good idea, especially with this cheap tool. And we're just gonna go over all the ones that we can see that might have been a little flattened out, trying to maintain the neck radius while we do it. All right, so we've got even frets. We've got a straight neck. Fretboard. Frets look good all the way across the fretboard. All right, so the last thing I'm gonna do with the strings off is I'm gonna put some lemon oil. I like this Dr. Duck's Axe Wax and String Lube. You can get it off Amazon. I will put the link again in the description. So I'm just gonna put a little bit on this microfiber cloth, and then I'm just gonna rub it like that in between each fret. It's gonna make the fretboard probably a little smoother, although if this is rich light, we're not gonna get a big effect from it because it's pretty non-porous, unlike wood, which kind of soaks in and will absorb that oil and stay a little bit oily. So we're just gonna rub it on, and it will help a little bit. And also maybe clean up these frets a little bit, which are kind of tarnished. All right, I'm gonna take a coffee break, put the strings on, and then we can work on the nut. All right, so I have my coffee, and I put on a brand new set of strings. I like the Ernie Ball regular Slinky 10s. Link in the description. You can use whatever strings you want. However, it's important to put new strings on it before you do any of your setup. That way you don't have weird string issues with stretching and stuff like that that can throw off the setup. So I've got brand new strings on it. So now, even though we did the neck adjustment with the truss rod, the nut is still too high. So we're still gonna need to do that adjustment. Making the neck a little less concave will help bring that nut down, but not that much, just like probably not even noticeable. So I'm gonna check that nut height again. I don't expect it to have changed too much. Yeah, we're still over a millimeter here and about right at a millimeter here. So we need to bring that down. And because these nuts are like cheap plastic nuts, they're really soft, they're really easy to file. So you have to be very careful not to take too much off of them. That's why I like to do it with a new set of strings on it. What I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna loosen each string, or if I can just kind of gently pull it off here, I'm gonna file it with, and again, this filing kit, it's a cheap kind of POS that comes with that Luthier set that I linked before from Amazon, and it's got different diameter files in it, so you can just kind of set it in and find the file that fits it for the right slot. A lot of these sets will just have like 6, but this one has a bunch, so you just have to find the right size that fits into the slot. That one's too thick. I used to mark these to know which ones I wanted, but now I just try and match them up to the strings or match them up to the nut slot that is already existing. I'm not like too concerned about it. So we found the right size file. I'm just gonna kind of file a little bit here. Again, with these cheap plastic nuts, we don't want to do too much. Then I'm gonna set the string back in. And I'm going to use my depth gauge to check the height again. We've come down a little bit, but we still got a ways to go. So I'm gonna continue this. I'm gonna do that same process through the rest of the strings until they are at about 0.6 millimeters on the low E and about 0.3 to 0.4 on the high E. And then we're gonna continue with our setup. The key to this, if you're gonna mess with your nut, is to not take too much off. You can always take more off. You can't add to it without replacing the nut. I mean, there are like wood fillers and like that, but I highly suggest not taking too much off. All right, so after a marathon filing session, every string was way too high on the nut, but I took them all down. We're at about 0.6 millimeters at the low E, and we're about at 0.4 millimeters at the high E. And so we've got the nut adjusted and it sounds pretty nice. Next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna just check the neck relief real quick. Now I'm not super concerned about this, but you want, like, a lot of people, some people like a very straight neck, some people like a little bit of concavity to it. Usually the guitar manufacturers recommend about 1/100 of an inch or 0.01 inches at the 8th fret. So in order to check your neck relief, if you'd like to do this, what you can do is put a capo on the 1st fret, and then you can either put your finger and hold down the fret at the last fret, or like where the neck meets the body. It doesn't really matter that much. And then you're just gonna take a feeler gauge, and this one is made for guitar, so the gold feeler gauge, every other one is silver, is the neck relief that you wanna shoot for. And we're gonna just slide that at the 8th fret, and it should just slide without pushing the string up at the 8th fret on the high E and low E. And this one has a little extra neck relief. I'm not gonna be concerned about it too much. And the main reason I'm not worried about this is because I already adjusted the neck flat, and the only concavity that we have right now is from the string tension. So I'm not worried about it being too concave or too flat. So I'm good with this. And so the last thing I'm gonna do is adjust the intonation. But before I do that, I just like to go over the guitar one more time and just make sure there's no buzzing frets, or not a lot of buzzing frets. With electric, I'm not super concerned because you're not gonna hear that through the amp. It's pretty much in tune. It's not exactly in tune yet, but I'm just gonna kind of play around. Check like the higher fret. And I don't really hear a lot of buzzing or even some frets that aren't playing properly. The neck was pretty awesome right out of the gate, so that's a very big plus for this thing. You just want to make sure before you adjust the intonation that your neck relief isn't too much or too little, so that you've got some buzzing in the frets, but this thing appears to be pretty good. All right, so to check the intonation on this guitar, what we're gonna do is we're gonna plug it into a tuner. I use the Boss Chromatic tuner, or if you have like a headstock tuner, that you can do that as well. And we're gonna play, just starting with the high E string, we're gonna play the high E, make sure we're in tune, and then we're just gonna play it at the 12th fret. And we're almost dead on there. We're gonna do the B, almost dead on there. We're gonna do the G, almost dead on. D, just needs a little adjustment. Pretty close. A, pretty much there. And E might be a little off. And so the E is off. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna adjust the intonation. We're gonna adjust the intonation, and to do that, we're gonna use a Phillips head screwdriver. And we're gonna adjust these screws at the end of the bridge. So when I play the E open, it's pretty much dead on the E, but when I play it at the 12th fret, it's a little sharp. So in order to change the intonation for that, what I want to do is I want to adjust these screws at the bridge to bring this saddle back. So I'm going to tighten the screw, which is going to bring the saddle back a little bit. Now I'm going to retune the E string. And then I'm going to check the 12th fret again. It's a little bit closer. If we wanted to be like really anal about it, we can adjust it a little bit more. Like that should pretty much do it. We're going to tune the E string again. And then we're going to play at the 12th fret.
and we're just like right on. So we want to repeat that process with each string. If you want to be really anal about it, you can do it. Just be careful not to push down too hard on the string, because by pushing it down into the fret, you can sometimes change the tuning of it. And you really want to kind of use the pressure that you might use it when you're holding a chord or holding a note up there. And then you can go through and adjust all of them.
All right, so the last thing we're going to do before this guitar is ready to play is we're going to adjust the action height. So in order to do that, we're going to use that little Allen wrench that came with the guitar to adjust these little set screw height. So basically what you want to do is you want to measure the height of the string above the 12th string. And what I like is about 2 32nds. So you're going to use your depth gauge just to measure that. And I like it to about 2 32nds all the way across the fretboard. And so you're going to raise or lower these saddles using this Allen wrench on these screws until you get to the 2 32nds is what I like, or whatever action height you really like. And then you're going to retune the guitar and make sure there's no string buzz or dead frets or anything like that going up and down the neck. And then if you do have like too excessive buzzing that bothers you or dead frets, you shouldn't have if the frets are even, but it's a possibility if your neck relief is not right. You can just raise it up a little bit, or you can redo the steps with adjusting your neck relief with the truss rod. And then finally, sometimes once you've adjusted that action down, your pickups will be a little too high. Sometimes if you press the last fret down, like the coil from the pickup might even hit your strings. So I like to just kind of eyeball it, but I like to just press each string down at the last fret and then use these Phillips head screws on either side of the pickup to either raise or lower the pickup. And I want to kind of make sure the gap is pretty even across. And you can do more adjustments once you're plugged into the amp and see if you have any, if your pickups are too close, they'll kind of have like a weird sound. And if they're too far away, they'll be pretty low output and also have a different type of weird sound. So you can mess with that. But again, I like to just kind of eyeball it and make sure there's about the same gap that you have with your action when you between the coil and the pickup and the string. And that's a good starting point, about 2 32nds. And then you can raise or lower depending on your preference. All right, so here's the moment we've probably all been waiting for. We're going to hear how this thing actually sounds after it's been set up. So first we're going to start off with a clean tone. I'm playing through my Fender Twin Reverb amp, and I've got no effects pedals on right now. I've just got some reverb. So let's hear how it sounds. This is in the bridge pickup. So the bridge pickup's a little punchy, maybe a little punchier than my my normal Strat, but not bad at all. So let's try the neck pickup. Pretty full, not bad sound. All right, so let's hear it with some distortion. I've got the rat pedal on going here. So a little noisy, but overall not too bad. Not a bad sounding guitar. Now, like, to be honest, a lot of the tone comes from the amp. So like playing through a really nice amp like this is going to help the guitar out. The pickups are pretty hot, a little noisy. Not a amazing full rounded sound, but really not bad. I'd probably put a new bridge pickup in because that's really the only one I use most of the time. But like, to be honest, once we got this thing set up and got the action right, the playability is fine. The neck's a little thicker. I don't mind a 50 style neck, and a lot of people kind of actually like it. And I mean, there's no frills to it, but like, you're not expecting it and you don't need it. So all in all, this is a very viable option for a beginner guitar player. Now, with the caveat that, I spent about 2 hours filing the frets, getting the setup right, getting the action low, that kind of stuff. So like, if you're a beginner, you're probably not going to know how to do that. You might mess it up. So it's kind of a risk. The main area that's going to make or break you when you're trying to upgrade a guitar is the neck. And this neck came like pretty perfect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this guitar up for auction on eBay because I don't really need it. And basically, I'm going to list it for the price that I paid, plus whatever the shipping cost is going to be to ship it. So if you're interested in like kind of a practice guitar or something to mess with, this thing's already set up and ready to go. It sounds decent. It's going to be playable, and you could probably get it for the same price you would buy it on Amazon. Great for kids because it's really light, and great for something you want to maybe just beat around. So I'll put the link for the eBay auction right here. It will be up when this video is posted. Shout out to Milehouse Studios on YouTube. He's a YouTube channel, great YouTube channel. The dude's hilarious. And he's a real luthier. He makes guitars, and he does like reviews like on stuff like this. And he always auctions his stuff on eBay when he's done with it. So I got the idea from him. You really should check it out. He knows what he's doing, and he's got a great channel. He's really funny. And then one last link. I know there's like links throughout this video, but there's just a lot of stuff that I think you guys could really use and really want. But if you want to buy this guitar, I'll put a link in the description as well. And just remember, all the Amazon links, I get a tiny commission off of, which helps support the channel. So if you want to get the stuff through me, that really helps a lot. And that's it for this one. I hope you enjoyed the video. I will see you guys next time.